that have either attempted to commit suicide or have committed suicide then died in combat. That's a failure on the military's behalf, especially at Fort Lewis-McChord. We know that when I went through the medical discharge process, it takes about 1 year after a doctor submits the paperwork. So you have a huge epidemic within the military. The Army Times has reported that 750 service members, vets from all wars that are still currently alive, attempt to take their lives every month at a rate of 18 every day. These numbers don't lie. That's the Army Times that's reporting this. This is an epidemic within the military, and the military is incapable of helping its service members. You know, these are young men and women from working families that join the military and put their lives on the line, and when they come home, they're not being treated properly. So it really begs to highlight a question that if the military is incapable of helping its own service members, then why would we believe that its prime mission is to liberate other countries? I think it's a very important issue that must be asked. And as far as helping other service members with PTSD, that's what March Forward, our organization, does do, is we want to reach out to these soldiers that feel like they're drowning in this sea of despotism and sadness, and show them that they don't have to feel that way, that there is a better way, and we want to give them an alternative route to leave the military. And we've been successful with that. If we can look at one case, Danny Birmingham, for example, who deployed to Iraq, came back, he filed a conscientious objector packet. We helped facilitate his transition out of the Army. He's also a member of our organization. And this is, as far as we're concerned, as far as we know, the first time in this decade-long brutal occupation and war that anybody's been able to file a conscientious objector status on the grounds of morality. And what this does do is it shows service members that do feel lost and alone that there is a positive way out, there is another way, and we want to provide that for them. You refused to deploy again, Kevin? Correct. I was supposed to deploy in 2009, 2010. I went to the doctor's office. At first, I was seeing a psychologist for about a year after my second deployment, and their attempt was to adjust me with adjustment disorder. This is after 6 years in the military. I've never once been in trouble, and all of a sudden, it was an adjustment disorder. And what they did is they put me on a 90-day temporary profile after I told them I wouldn't go back to Iraq. And our brigade commander at the time, and this goes along with what just happened to that staff sergeant who was deployed after possibly being diagnosed with TBI, is there was multiple soldiers that were given non-deployable profiles. The unit deployed, and to maintain logistic security in Iraq, they have to have a specific number. When the unit deployed, they counted all of us as deploying with that unit. They arrived downrange, which is a term used for in theater in Iraq. And there was a huge chunk of people missing. So the brigade commander, the officer's response was to attempt to override multiple soldiers' medical profiles that were given by psychologists, psychiatrists, and doctors that were trying to seek legitimate help. This is consistent with the behavior with the officer corps within the military, not taking the pleas of soldiers seriously. We're talking with Kevin Baker in Los Angeles now. He's an Iraq War vet, refused to redeploy as part of the group March Forward, and was stationed at Fort Lewis-McChord, where this 38-year-old soldier was stationed as well in Washington State, who is now on his 4th tour of duty in Afghanistan. Joaquin Sapien, you did the series of pieces called Brain Wars, how the military is failing its wounded. What did you find? What is the military doing?
Well, the focus of my reporting was on how the military assesses soldiers for whether or not they have suffered a brain injury during their deployment. And what we found was that there were significant problems with a computerized test that they give to all the soldiers to kind of get a baseline of their cognitive functioning. As it turns out, the test that they use, which is called the ANAM, Automated Neuropsychological Assessment Metrics, was not actually designed to detect brain injuries and was never really scientifically proven to diagnose these kinds of brain injuries. It's more of a performance-based test. The idea was that you would give it to someone like an astronaut or some high-level elite soldier to see whether they had the cognitive ability to operate a very sophisticated piece of equipment. And then after their deployment, they're supposed to take the test again to see whether or not their cognitive function has decreased. The problem is that most soldiers don't take the test again. The military just doesn't give it because they don't have the confidence that the first baseline actually means anything to begin with. And we uncovered that the reason why this particular test was selected is because people who had a a stake in it, a professional or even a financial stake in it, were involved in selecting it. And so there's a lot of nepotism involved.
Explain that. I mean, it's amazing the way you lay this out. The people pushing this are the ones who are financially benefiting from this, and the Pentagon has been giving millions of dollars to this project.
Well, they spent about $42 million on this particular test, and they've given it to over 1 million soldiers since 2008. And the people who were involved had been for some time. I mean, before, around the time of the Gulf War is when this thing really started to come to fruition. And there was a group of researchers in the military who had been pushing for this for a long time, and some of which had moved on to Oklahoma University and to other locations. And what the long story short is that they sort of, through a chain of contractors and subcontractors, developed a way in which they would administer this test to many, many soldiers, and the money that goes from one place to another kind of moves in this circle, going directly from the people who selected it to those who, made it. And there are significant problems with it that is now under investigation by Congress. And so getting back to the point at hand, frankly, we don't know whether or not this particular soldier has indeed suffered a brain injury. What we've seen are unnamed sources in various news media saying that that is a possibility, and it's absolutely a possibility. I mean, a very large number of soldiers report having these injuries. This person had been, this is his 4th deployment, and, somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 soldiers have reported having these kinds of injuries. But the second thing to consider is also whether this kind of injury can make someone more prone to the sort of violent tendencies that this person demonstrated. Right now, the state of the science does not necessarily prove that. There is a small but growing body of studies that suggest that maybe with damage to a certain part of the brain in the prefrontal cortex, which is where our sort of behavioral inhibitors are located within the brain, then you might make sort of more rash decisions. So it remains to be seen whether A, this person did absolutely suffer a brain injury, and B, whether that's responsible for his behavior. If he did suffer a brain injury and the military somehow didn't catch it and deployed this person again, then I think that gets right back to the subject of our reporting, which shows that there were major problems in how the military assesses these soldiers and how they treat them, and whether or not they decide that they are actually equipped to redeploy.
I want to give the last word to Kevin Baker. The kill team also came from Fort Lewis-McChord, where you were stationed. This group of men in Afghanistan who were gathering body parts for trophies like fingers and other body parts. It's also a place of an extremely high suicide rate. Did what happened with the kill team change the atmosphere, or how Fort Lewis-McChord, the joint base, dealt with their soldiers?
No, I don't think it did at all. I think that when these situations come up, the military's response is to immediately wage a PR campaign that really does nothing except for confuses the general public into thinking that they've done something to catch these soldiers before they deploy. I think that the point behind what's going on at Fort Lewis is that this 10-year brutal occupation, soldiers going on multiple deployments, the military being incapable of helping them, is creating these situations that all of these horrible atrocities that are happening, are a result of this occupation, where soldiers cannot explain why they're being constantly deployed. They can't find help when they get back. The internal racist mechanism within the U.S. military that promotes the idea to dehumanize people that are in Afghanistan and Iraq. I think it's something that has to end, and it has to end by public support and internal pressure from soldiers, service members, and their families. The only reason that there was an investigation launched into Fort Lewis is because some of the historical work that we've done on that base from all the way back from 2009. And I think that the military is not going to wake up one day and say that we feel it's necessary to help our soldiers. The only way that's going to happen is service members, vets, family members, organizers, and loved ones getting together and demanding change. I think it's absolutely tragic every time a service member takes their life. It's tragic what happened in Afghanistan. The 10-year occupation is tragic. The only way to begin real change is an immediate withdrawal out of Afghanistan. And I think that, just to highlight this, if we look at if a soldier is wounded on a battlefield in combat and they're bleeding to death, and an officer orders that person to not receive medical attention, costing that service member their life, that officer would be found guilty of dereliction of duty and possibly murder. But when that happens in the U.S., when that happens for soldiers that are going to seek help, and officers are ordering not a clear diagnosis for PTSD, and essentially denying them that metaphoric tourniquet, real psychological help, and the soldier ends up suffering internally to the point of taking their own life or somebody else's life, that these officers in this military and the Pentagon has to be held responsible for these atrocities. It's not a bottom to top issue, it's a top to bottom issue. And if people want to get involved, at our website we have a petition signed up for people to check out. It's at marchforward.org. Thank you for having me.
Kevin, thanks very much for being with us. Kevin Baker is an Iraq War vet who was stationed at Fort Lewis-McChord, where the soldier was stationed who committed the massacre in Afghanistan, the killing of 16 Afghans. Joaquin Sapien, thank you very much for being with us at ProPublica. We will link to his series called Brain Wars, How the Military is Failing Its Wounded. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, the race for what's left, the global scramble for the world's last resources. Stay with us. We'll be back in 15 seconds.